You come into the studio, and one day you might be working on spoken word, TV, film material. The next, it might be I first met Glenn as I was working with a different studio. It was here in Charlotte, and we were doing a lot of sound-alike recordings for TV, film, karaoke, and we contracted work out to Gat3, and Glenn helped do thousands of songs, and I'm not exaggerating. When I say thousands of songs, we literally recorded that many. That recording studio got purchased by an investor, and they moved the business out of the country to Canada. So there was sort of an open spot in my career. And I called Glenn, and we chatted, and I mentioned that I'd love to work together, and they needed some work here as well. So we met and agreed to put our heads together and start working collaboratively. And that was 15 years ago this summer, 15 years. Probably the first personal collaboration that Glenn and I did, where one of the biggest jazz keyboardists of the time, T. Lavitz, was recording an album, and he had gotten Jeff Berlin on bass guitar and Dennis Chambers on drums, and anybody who knows jazz music knows that those guys are as legendary as it gets. So Glenn and I both got to mix and master that album called Boston Tea Party. That was the beginning of Glenn and I really working one-on-one together. And it was such a great time. We had such fun doing that record. And that led to me soon coming on full-time here. One nice benefit of doing this type of work is that every day is vastly different. You come into the studio, and one day you might be working on spoken word, TV, film material. The next, it might be rock and roll. The next, it might be country. Then next, it might be hip hop or pop music. It's really varied, and that's fascinating. And one aspect of that is you never know what artist you're going to work with. So I remember fondly one day, Susan came into the control room, and she told me that tomorrow morning I have a recording session with a Nigerian person named Bongos. And little did we know, we started doing some research. It turns out Bongos was probably the biggest Nigerian artist ever, the quote Elvis Presley of Nigeria. And it turns out working with Bongos was a really, really empowering experience, because if you ever met this guy, he was so humble, so genuine, and so full of knowledge that Glenn and I would just have conversations with him, and just his remarks and the way he spoke and talked about life really elevated all of us, and I have keen memories of that experience. Glenn and I both are very old school, that we believe that this is a craft and a trade, the engineering side of what we do. Glenn talked to me and said he wanted to pass on all this experience we had, and he'd like to put together a school program. And if I look back, I believe it was 2013. And so we have been teaching the school program since then. And that's just one aspect of all the various things that Gat3 does. We've met a lot of great students in the school program. Some of them have come to work here. Some of them have gone on to do their own artistry thing. But it's really, really fulfilling to be able to share all this knowledge that Glenn and I have acquired and be able to continue and pass that on. The school program has always been very, very fun and fulfilling for me to do personally. I actually like teaching. I like talking shop. I like talking about this process. One common question that I'll get a lot from artists and clients, they'll look at all the gear and the consoles and the buttons and knobs and the gadgets, and they'll say, how do you know how to run this stuff? How did you learn that? And it makes me reflect on how much we've grown and gone through different technology as a studio. When Glenn and I first started, we had 2-inch analog tape and fond memories of all the limitations and advantages of being confined to 24 tracks or 16 tracks of analog tape, and what that meant for song arrangement and the craft and the recording knowledge it took to properly capture all that and make use of the great sound of analog tape. Well, then, just when you become really, really proficient and an expert at that, the technology changes, and here comes digital technology and audio. We went through a vast period where we used digital tape recorders, digital tape, digital machines, and then that has blossomed into what we call DAWs today, digital audio workstations, and a whole new vast array of having to learn computer use and make computers work the way tape machines used to work. But we've had to just jump in with our feet in the water and dive in and learn it. And we've both embraced it. And we both will probably always share a fondness for the original way that we made records with vintage gear and analog tape. But we move on for the future, and we embrace what we have to do today, and we make it work to our advantage. And it seems like a never-ending process. Every time we turn around, there's a new piece of software or a new plugin or a new feature in a DAW, and we have to learn that as we're going. But in a way, it's sort of fun and exciting to do that, and I always look forward to those challenges. As we reflect on these 27 years, it's going to be, I'm sure, 27 and many more great years beyond that. All this does for me is just think how exciting it's been working here, and all the great encounters and people and stories and things that have happened along the way, that I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. Knowing the way Glenn and Susan operate, where they're always in the cutting edge and they're always pushing forward, I see great things in the future, and I can't wait to see what's just around the corner.